Okay, so let's unpack this, because there is a lot to unpack with this film. So the reason I kind of decided to come see this movie as opposed to some of the movies that came out this week is, number one, because nothing that came out this week looked good, or even remotely good, or like it was going to be a fun time at the movies, or it was going to be fun to review, or anything like that. Secondly, when I was looking on Yahoo earlier this week, it had this film listed as the first official flop of 2019. That's after it's been out for a week. And I was like, okay, well, with that endorsement, I can go see it and at least have fun ripping a cheesy Harry Potter knockoff, which it has that in its DNA, but that description is not accurate. That is not all this film has going for it. The way I look at it is this film, and I thought of this, I was very proud of this when I was watching the movie. I came up with this while I was watching it. This film is the Monster Squad to Harry Potter's Goonies. It has the same DNA, it has the same makeup, and I think it's looking for the same audience, but it's a very different film. Very, very different film. So let me start out by saying, and I'll get into why this is here in a moment. But if you have young kids, if you've got kids like about this age and they're, that early movie going age and what, you know the age I'm talking about. You need to take them to see this. You've got to do that. Okay, do it. It's important that you do it. I believe that. I believe it is very important that kids see this movie and see it soon. And I will explain why. While, yes, this may be the first flop of 2019, I also think it's one of, so far, of the four I've seen, it's probably the most important one of 2019 so far. This film has an agenda. And it's an agenda that needs to be fed. Okay? Let's back up. So, as you can probably tell from any trailers or advertising for this film, this movie is basically a modern retelling of the Arthur myth, where a young man finds the sword and the stone. Of course, there's an ancient evil that is going to come, and blah, 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 and he meets Merlin, and goofy Ron Weasley becomes a knight, and the two school bullies become knights as well, and they go on a magical quest. So in the overview, in the broad strokes, this film does resemble just another Harry Potter ripoff. Some kid, like even he, and I think this was really clever of them in the writing, and they put this in the trailer, even the kid who would be king, the kid playing Alex, or the Arthur stand-in, has that belief that he is the next Luke Skywalker or the next Harry Potter, and he even lays it out, someone who doesn't know their family, who turns out that they're destined to do this, that he really believes that it's all this destiny. But as the film goes on, and this is where it gets really clever, there's a couple things this film does that's very clever. First of all, is it totally turns this chosen one narrative completely on its head. Okay? Because even our hero, the young man who we're following, truly believes that this is a destiny thing, that this is a chosen one narrative. That he is the last descendant of Arthur, and his father, his mother tells him that his father left because he had demons to battle. And the kid thinks that is a literal thing when he finds out about all this sword and sorcery nonsense. So he thinks that his father was actually, out fighting demons. So when all this goes on, he goes on a quest to find his father and learn all these secrets and blah, blah, blah. And he gets there, and it turns out, his dad's a freaking drunk. He's not some mystical hero. He's not, descended from a line of great warriors. He's just a kid. And the message there being, as, Merlin depicts to him as, he kind of learns, is that the sword didn't pick you because of a bloodline. It's not an important thing about, you being chosen. It's about who you are as a person. And I think that's really important. First of all, I hate chosen one narratives. They very rarely work. Matt and I were trying one time to figure out how many chosen one narratives actually worked. And the only ones we could come up with were, I think Harry Potter's subversion of the chosen one narrative worked. But I don't, everyone else considers him a chosen one, but he's technically not a chosen one. Buffy the Vampire Slayer's chosen one narrative works because it's a subversion of, she wasn't chosen because, it was a destiny thing. It was random. It could have been anybody, but it turned out to be her. And the only one we could think of where it was predestined and all that really worked was Star Trek Deep Space Nine with Captain Sisko, kind of becoming what he becomes. There it worked. All right. So chosen one narratives, in my opinion, don't work. And on top of that, they take away from what I think is the more important element. See, people think lazy screenwriters go in for chosen one narratives because they believe that it fits the audience's ego trip of, well, you there, you're the most specialist person that ever lived. You're not just a normal person. You're really supposed to be magic and all this crap. And I think that's bull. I think it is more important in a story like this that the hero be an every kid. That they not be someone destined for it. Because then it says, you can be this. You don't have to be magic or special. You can rise to the occasion. Again, I'm using the examples of, the Goonies were not chosen to go on this quest for treasure. They just did, and they had to rise to the occasion. What the quirks that made them weirdos were the things that helped them through. Ditto for the kids in the Monster Squad. They weren't destined to find the book and, banish the universal monsters. They had to put their knowledge of monster movies and things into practical use. And I think this movie is another subversion of the chosen one narrative by even the kid having been inundated with them in pop culture, buying into it, and then finding out, no, it's not about just, oh, you're chosen to do this. It's about you need to rise to the occasion. You need to become better. And that is the other thing this film does really well. I was going to save this to the end, but we got to talk about this now, folks, because this is important. What makes this movie different from every other Harry Potter, young kid magic, thing out there is that this movie has a message. It has a message that it is screaming at the top of its lungs. And it is screaming it right at the kids in the audience. And that message is, you need to do better than the generation that just came before you. Because kids, we done fucked up. My generation, the generation immediately after mine, and the one after that. Folks, we have fucked up. Look at the world. Look at it. And that is what this movie is saying. Look at this world. Look at what we did. We fucked up. And I don't care what you think about the people running this place. They fucked up. We fucked up. It's all fucked up. And this movie is screaming that at the kids, but not in a we're all doomed kind of way. It is screaming at them, you need to save us. You need to be better than us. You need to somehow teach us and fix this mess that we have made. And it is not hide from the fact that it's a shitty thing. It's a hard job. It sucks that you have to do it. But you gotta do it. And it is screaming this moral at the top of its lungs. Some would say in an unsubtle way. It's not subtle. But I'm sitting there watching this film going, we don't have time to be subtle. We don't have time for kids to realize this, 5-10 years down the line, or 20 or more. We don't have time for them to do like we had the luxury of doing with our kids' movies and enjoying them for the superficiality of a kid going on a grand adventure and then, learning kind of the deeper morals of it later in life when we had time to reflect and we had more knowledge. We don't have time for that shit no more. So yeah, the message is unsubtle, but it needs to be. Because it is begging the children to save us. To save us from the shit show we have created. And it calls us out. Not us necessarily, but it calls society, the world, out on our petty, monstrous bullshit that we have been pulling. And yeah, I'm telling you, man, again, not subtle, not a subtle message by any stretch of the imagination, but I was on board with it. I'm sitting there going, yes. So that is why I believe this movie is important. That is why I think you need to take your kids to see this movie. They need to be told this. So now so that's my praise for the movie, and that is my shouting, my praises for this movie at the top of my lungs, literally. Is it a perfect movie as it stands? No, it is not a perfect movie as it stands. It has some issues. It drags. It's not paced very well. I don't know how many films the director has, in fact, directed. Every time I say something like this, and then I go and research it, the issue with doing one of these completely unscripted, it turns out they've done a lot or whatever. But there's a lot of directorial problems, especially early in the movie, that don't, that are just not great. In the early parts of the movie, the director has this real weird thing. I know he's trying to cram a lot of exposition in and trying to get a lot of world building done as fast as he can because the quest takes a long time. But he has this weird thing where characters will start a conversation in one location, and that rhymes. Then cut to another location. Now, that is not bad. Films do that all the time. But the problem is the conversation is uncut. It's like the continual conversation. You don't feel like they're picking it up 15 minutes later or 20 minutes later. You feel like they're saying one thing throughout this weird time jump. So either there's a long pause in that conversation that we're not privy to, or they're time jumping. And it's really distracting early in the film because he does it a lot. The kid actors, and this is again why I say this is another reason I say that this is the Monster Squad to Harry Potter's Goonies. The kid actors are not bad. None of them are bad. They're not great. I think they're as good as they can be, but compare them to kind of the young actors in Harry Potter, and there's really no comparison. With one exception. There is one exception to that, and that is the young man who's playing the young Merlin. There's two Merlins. There's Patrick Stewart as old Merlin, and then there's this kid as young Merlin. And the kid's name is Alec Ingram or something like that. I tried to look him up. Alec or Alex, I can't remember now. But he is really good. He is just so good. You know, part of the reason, and I've mentioned this in other reviews, you know, part of the reason why you want a really seasoned British actor to carry some of the supporting roles in a film like this, you know, there's a reason when they did Harry Potter, they got, you know, Alec Rickman, Maggie Smith, you know, Warwick Davis, Robert Carlyle, not Robert Carlyle, Robbie, I forget the guy who played Hagrid. It'll come to me. But when they got all these really great actors to play these Hogwarts professors, it wasn't just as a, you know, ha-ha wink to the audience. It was because they make it feel real. They give it weight. They can say these crazy things and make you believe it because they're seasoned and they're, you know, they have that gravitas to them. So Patrick Stewart's in here to kind of do some of that. But for the most of the screen time, it's this kid playing young Merlin. And for someone as young as he is, he does a really great job of it. You know, he does it with the same conviction of one of these older actors. And here's the other weird thing. This kid has got Patrick Stewart's inflections and little character twerks and everything down pat. Like, he sounds like, not so much in the voice, how that they have the same voice, but in the way he says lines, he sounds exactly like Patrick Stewart. And I'm sitting there watching going, you know, if they have not hired this kid to play a young Picard in that new Picard series that they're planning, they need to do that. Because then you can get some flashbacks of Picard as a teenager, and this kid could totally pull it off. So yeah. You know, like I say, it's got some pacing problems. It drags. The acting isn't quite as good. But that does not make it a bad movie. Matter of fact, you know, I was sitting there watching it and I'm thinking, you know, if this had come out when I was a kid, this would have been one of my new favorite things. This would have been one of those movies that I got on VHS and watched 150 times, like I did with Goonies, like I did with the Monster Squad. You know, I would have eaten this up. And what I was really happy about is, you know, there were some kids in the audience. It wasn't a very full theater, but there were families there. And it looked like the kids were really getting into it. Especially, you know, to do magic, Merlin has to do all these weird hand things. And the kids were doing it with him, like they were clapping, and you know, and like the movie ended, and the kids were applauding, the kids were loving it, and I'm like, good. So yeah, you know, I'm usually not one for message movies, or if there is a message, actually that's not true. I do like message movies, but I like my messages to be delivered to me in a much more subtle, balanced way. I like the argument and the thinking that has to be done, as opposed to just the soapbox preaching that tends to happen whenever people feel they have something really important to say with their film or whatever piece of art, because it comes off as lecturing and it comes off as pompous more often than not. But this is one time, I've said it and I'll say it again, it is an important film for your kids to see. Because we need to get these kids, we got to get their brains in the right spot, folks. We've got to get them to understand they have to be better than us. They have got to ditch the bullshit that has led us astray, and they have got to save us, because there's no other choice. You know, I don't know if we can pull ourselves out of the tailspin, but maybe they can, and this movie is screaming that. And we need the kids to hear it. So, final grade for this one, it's kind of a hard one, because it's a toss-up. Because on the one hand, I like a lot of it. The action is fairly good and exciting. The special effects are decent. They're not great. Everything about it is kind of decent, but not great. But I wholeheartedly agree with the message it's shouting. So, I think if I'm being honest, I think we have to go with a B+. I think it just misses out on the A level just barely. So I gotta go a B+ for this one. So yeah, I leave you again with a plea in the same way this movie is pleading. Take your kids to see this. All right? They need to see it, and they need to know now. All right? And if you've got to be told something hard like this, it's best to do it in a movie that is flawed, but still entertaining. It was entertaining. I enjoyed it. And I'm glad I saw it, and I do not want this to be a flop. I want this to be a hit. So let's get on it, people. Let's get on it. All right. So I gotta say, so far, the year 2019 is doing okay for itself with these movies. This has not been a bad ride so far. I have a feeling that's going to dip off here in a little bit, but so far we're riding a decent wave here. So let's hope that continues. So thank you for watching. For my friends who always join me, we thank you. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.